I will. All right, so let me share. All right, so hopefully everyone is seeing the title slide.
I see
We
it.
do,
All
we
right,
do,
perfect.
thank you.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the API Portal 5.3 release. That will be coming out right now. The date appears to be next Tuesday, July 2nd. So that should hold true as long as nothing unforeseen comes up. We've actually completed all the testing. We're just doing the kind of the final parts of getting all the downloads in place and tech docs published and all that stuff. So yeah, that you should be seeing that announcement come out on Tuesday, unless something unexpected happens. Key capabilities. So these capabilities we'll dive into a little bit deeper, but at first glance here, we're going to be talking about the new way of API key deployments being enhanced to provide the ability to have a shared API key repository. This will be for the OTK for this initial release, and we'll expand in future to other types of key storage. We're going to be supporting the ability to have mutual TLS for client certificates actually uploaded and managed within the portal itself. We're enhancing the policy templates that you can build to now allow you to declare fields with drop-down values. So you can actually, set those specific values in a drop-down list. GraphMan bundles will now be supported via the UI. If you recall, last release, we had PAPI support, the portal API support for that, but now that's been extended to the UI itself. We've also made some enhancements to template management that we'll go through with some new kind of UI design and some new capabilities. And then in preview mode, we have added the ability to support the distributed rate limit assertion from the gateway for working with Redis. And for each of these, we'll dig a little deeper as we get into the session. Some other notable capabilities. So we started the removal of PSSG. So everything within the portal stack except the TPS container. So we couldn't quite get it all out in this release, but the plan would be to remove PSSG completely in the next release. So in 5.3.1, you should see the ability to no longer have the PSSG at all, right? And so that will basically reduce the overall portal footprint a bit. Another capability was the ability to deploy API tag data to the gateway. So this will actually be deployed as part of the service properties for the policies that are running on the gateway. And to leverage this capability, you will need to enable this feature flag deploy API tag on change. So that will actually push API tag data to both portal published and gateway published APIs. Again, this will just be going to the service properties of the policy. And really the reason for providing that is we had some customers that are feeding some data out to other kind of external analytic solutions, and they like to be able to report based on the tags associated with each API. So this will basically make that tag data available within policy so that you can capture that as part of the metrics that you're capturing. Right. With this release, we're also updating our Debian to version 12. So we will be issuing a patch that will allow you to in-place upgrade your Debian 11 portals to Debian 12, as well as there will also be a Debian 12 OVA for those that are starting new with a fresh install. Note that Debian 11 is considered deprecated at this point. We're not going to be releasing any new patches for Debian 11. So any patches for vulnerabilities going forward would be based on Debian 12 only. The last item here, making the portal deployer port configurable. You'll now basically from the portal, we're doing this via the portal API actually, you'll be able to declare what port you want the portal deployer to run on within the gateways. So you can have that set different values for different gateways if you so desire. But this will just give you more flexibility and control over being able to, for example, isolate network interfaces, things like that, because previously the portal deployer was hard coded to 8443. So now you will have the flexibility to change that. So any questions on any of these before I move on? I'm not really going to spend any more time on these. So if you have a question, now's the time to ask on this one. Okay, if not, moving right along. Some other notable changes. Legacy Sync is no longer supported as of this release. So everyone should be running on the message-based sync. That's been out for a few releases now. We did send a deprecation notice in the last release indicating that this would be going away. So it's no longer supported. It is still there. It still technically mostly works. Obviously new features we've added aren't necessarily fully compatible with Legacy Sync. So just keep that in mind. But basically, make sure any of your customers that are running are getting converted over to message-based sync if they have not already. The next thing, the SMTP.
Sorry on that.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Does that mean that we should actually disable the scheduled tasks or not?
Yeah, the scheduled tasks can be completely disabled at this point. The only thing those were previously remaining around for was to get some of the things like the OTK version and some data. That's going to be a different avenue now. So yeah, those tasks can be completely disabled.
So probably best let it run and then disable, or disable them right from the word.
Yeah, it doesn't harm anything other than it puts out some error messages out in the logs, right? That folks don't like to see. But it won't hurt anything to be running. But yeah, obviously, if you don't want those messages in the logs, best just to get rid of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, yeah, next item, the SMTP container has been removed. So you will be required now to integrate with an external mail server if you do want email notifications to be sent out from your portal instance. And the last notable thing here is the container images for the portal will now be available from this layer7.packages.broadcom.com link. They are still being published on Docker.io, so you'll still have the ability to get them from there. But Broadcom is putting in its own kind of repository in place, and so going forward, we will be publishing to there. And there is a token that you will need to get access to. This will be documented in the release notes. But basically, if you go to support.broadcom.com, go to the download site, you should see a icon in that download page where you can actually get a token that you need to pull images from this site. All right, any questions on this? Okay, if not, moving on. So the first kind of key feature here is the API key deployments having a central key repository. So basically now you can have multiple proxies or gateways, right? Every time I say the word proxy, you just think gateway, right? They can all share a common API key store. The only key store type supported for now in this release is still the OTK. We've had some customers in the past that were sharing the OTK database without, it being officially supported or recognized by the portal. That worked, but it wasn't, the most efficient way, right? Because the portal didn't know that those multiple gateway clusters were actually connected to the same OTK database. So if you had 3 clusters, for example, sharing an OTK database, the portal thought they were all 3 independent. It deployed the keys to all 3, and all 3 then tried to write it to the database or update it, right? So now the portal definitely knows those are shared if you set it up this way, and that will then have the portal only deploy those keys to one of the gateway clusters, knowing that once that one gets updated, that they're all updated by virtue of sharing the same database. You will need to upgrade the portal integration bundle. So when you upgrade this version of a portal, you'll need to make sure to go on the gateways and do the integration bundle update. As I mentioned before about legacy sync, so legacy sync with this shared key capability is not fully supported. It kind of mostly works, but there are a few little quirks that you might run into if you try to. So we definitely do not recommend that you attempt to use legacy sync. And And kind of a key thing here, this will lay the foundation for supporting other key store types in the future, right? We've talked in the past about kind of decoupling OTK, right? For customers that are really only using OTK as a key store for API keys, right? Not really using the OAuth capabilities. That key data could go someplace else, such as Redis or some other kind of key value store, right? So this kind of puts that foundation in place and gives an idea of kind of where we want to go with this in future releases, right? So we'll have other key stores besides OTK planned for future releases. And one other note here is there are some buttons that were added to the key store to allow redeployment of keys or all keys or keys with any kind of deployment or pending deployment error status. So I'll just jump over to that real quick and just give you an idea. I'll log into this portal. Right, and you'll notice here there's a new manage key stores menu item. In this case, I have two. I have one for dev key store, one for prod key store. If I go to dev, not sure why I got into a disconnected state. Something got wrong there. But you will notice here, this does now say redeploy all keys, redeploy error and pending keys. So that will be available for any time where you may run into any kind of sync issues where keys are not, fully deployed successfully. You also see in this proxies tab, you'll get a listing of all the gateways or gateway clusters that are using this key store. So basically, if you want to add another one, right, you can go to the add button. And if I wanted to add prod, for example, I would just say assign. And then now the portal would be configured to have both this prod and dev gateway clusters using this same dev key store as associated here. Otherwise, everything else mostly looks the same as what you would expect to see from the old proxies tab in terms of what would have been shown for API key deployments. You'll have the API key deployments tab where you'll be able to see all the keys and filter and search based on what's deployed there. All right, any questions on that? All right, if not, jumping down to the next feature. So this feature is allowing you to upload a client certificate as part of the application definition. And then API keys can actually be associated with an application certificate. So this essentially allows you to configure an API to support mutual TLS, expect a client certificate, and then kind of authenticate that client certificate against what's expected for that specific application. There's also the ability here to do notifications. So if you have certificates that are nearing an expiration date, you'll actually be able to set up kind of criteria for different levels of notifications so that org admins, for example, can understand that they have applications within their organization that have certificates that are nearing expiration, and then take the action to perhaps update those or change them. And quickly going to that. So if I go to manage applications, and we'll use Megashop, for example, here. If I go to certificates, at this point, I do not have any, so I can actually go click to add one. If I go to upload, and let's see, I think I have one here. All right, if I save that, so now we'll see that certificate is uploaded, it's available. We see that it expires within 632 days in this case. And then when I go to add a new key, for example, I'll be able to say that this key is actually tied to this certificate, so that when this mutual TLS authentication is done, I still know or have an API key to associate that application for the purposes of metrics and reporting. For the notification side, if you go to the little gear icon and go to application and key settings, here you will have the ability to basically do expiry reporting. In this case, I need to enable reports. I can enable certificate. And basically what this will do is, in this case, any certificate that's expiring in less than 90 days will kind of have this yellow status. Any certificate expiring in less than 60 days will have the red status. And then you can configure the cadence of the report. And do note that if you are using the key secret expiry capability, this will be one combined report. So you'll get both secret expiration and certificate expiration together if you've turned them both on. Right. In this case, I don't have secrets on. I only have certificates, so I will only see certificates. All right. Any questions on that one? All right. If not, we'll move right along. Okay, this one fairly straightforward. This is just taking the Graphman bundle support that we introduced last release via the Portal API, and now allowing you to add those bundles directly via the UI. Have this example Graphman client example here, right? If you just do an export with the encapsulated assertion name, the policy name, output that out to this format of a name of your template dash version number dot JSON, right? And does expect this three position version number. And again, real quickly, if you go to manage bundles within the portal, you're just going to click add bundle. You're going to go pick a bundle. Let's say if Graphman client, I'll just pick this one, for example. That will basically load it up as a JSON file. And if I don't already have this one here, I don't, okay. Then it will show up here as a bundle, and then you can go to the bundle deployments to deploy this to your individual gateways. And just note that you do need to have this feature flag, feature flag Graphman bundles turned on for this to show up and for this to work. All right, questions on that one? Okay, if not, the next item is template management enhancements. We basically have added the new capability to declare some categories and templates as flexible. A flexible category basically means it can appear more than once and can be positioned anywhere in your policy that you're creating for the API when you're editing the API templates. So just gives you the ability to kind of, if you had something like, a logging category, for example, and you wanted to log in multiple places, you can now have that same category repeated in different places to do that. The same with templates within a category. We've also updated the UI to condense the view a bit. I think some of the feedback we had from the last version that it was a little hard to see all the policies that were associated with an API in a single view, right? It's kind of spaced out, and then you had to do a lot of scrolling. So we've condensed that view a bit to hopefully make that easier to read and easier to see. We've also added the ability to have categories associated to specific organizations. So if you want to have a different set of policies that apply only to a specific organization or category rather, you can now create categories and only make them visible to organizations that you choose. Right. So if we go back to the portal here, so again, if you go to manage policy template categories, you'll notice here in this list of categories, you now see the position, fixed versus flexible. So I have this one called backend routing as a flexible category. Again, it just means it can be repeated and used many places. If I go to one of the categories and go to the management options for it, you will notice here, first I have this button to whether or not to restrict it by organization. So currently that is off. I can declare whether it's fixed or flexible. And then I believe the rest of this remains pretty much the same as it was last release. But if I were to turn this on and say it is restricted by org. I could then go to the organizations tab, and then I could decide which organizations this is actually restricted to. Just going to turn that back off. And then if I go to the API, so we'll go to this first one, address validation. And if I go to edit policy templates, so first you'll notice this is a much more condensed view. I can very quickly see exactly which policy templates and categories are used within this API. I can also drag and drop, right? So if I wanted to move logging and auditing, for example, I can move that. You'll notice that this specific category, however, required that things be in a certain order. So by moving that, it took it out of compliance, and that's why now I kind of see this forced save, and I see this red icon here. So these icons kind of give clues or hints as to what's maybe wrong with the policy or what the rules are. So when one turns red, for example, I can mouse over and it tells me that there's a problem with the order. The green all just means that all templates are required from this category. The 1+ means at least one. I can still hit compliant to make this compliant. And if I want to add a category that's flexible, like the backend routing one that I had earlier, I can add that. I can move it up, maybe put it up here. I can add it again. And since it's flexible, it is allowed to exist more than once and in any position that I want to put that in. All right. Any questions on that? Great. If not, we'll move right on along to the next one. The next item here is to allow you to define drop-down value selection within a policy template. The other change within this feature is the order of fields that show up within policy templates will now match what is defined in the actual encapsulated assertion that you create. And so previously, you really had no control over the order. Now, whatever you define in that template will actually be the order it's presented in. You will need to use this naming syntax. So this is a screenshot in the bottom left corner here of the policy manager declaration of the variables for an encapsulated assertion. So this syntax L7.enum indicates that it is going to be a field with a drop-down select set of values. So the first name after enum would be the name of the variable. So in this case, environment. And then the drop-down options will be based on the kind of the fourth position here, right? So L7.enum, then environment.dev, QA, prod, right? So dev, QA, and prod will be the actual values. So if I go back to the policy manager here, edit the templates, there is a template I created called backend routing options. If I add the routing options and expand this, here you'll see again the drop downs dev QA prod. Then I added another field called authentication type, and then I can set that up. So again, the order of these fields shown here in the template are based on what's defined in the encapsulated assertion you create. And then the order of the drop-down fields you define are also honored based on the order that they're specified in that encapsulated assertion. All right, any questions on that one? Right. Okay, next item here is the ability to do distributed rate limit. So this is a preview feature. This is also leveraging the Gateway's distributed rate limit assertion, which is also in preview mode. Do note this requires Gateway 11.1 or higher, right? That's where the distributed rate limit assertion is available. You also must turn on this feature flag called feature flag distributed rate limit. And once you do that, when you go to edit a rate limit in quota object, you will see a new option here called distributed rate limit. And I'll just jump over and show that live here. So if I go to manage rate limits and quotas, I do see a question in the chat. Does layer 7 supports enum data type now? So not exactly. Enum was just kind of a nomenclature we use, kind of a pattern in the naming of the variable, but it's not, quote, an enum data type per se, right? It's kind of a way that we worked around some of the the limitations of what an encapsulated assertion can provide. And so it's just more of a naming convention that we use versus a true data type. Right. So if I go to, let's see, pick one of these types. All right. So if I go to edit this rate limiting quota object, you will notice now there is both a rate and now a distributed rate. So it is still possible to leverage the traditional rate limiting, right? That just use the kind of the apply rate limit assertion from the gateway, as well as the distributed. So you could configure your rate limit quota to support both, or you may decide you only want to support distributed rate limit. Here you'll be able to put in the limit, and it's either per second or per minute. And you can declare the burst limit, and the burst limits are going to be basically defined as part of what the distributed rate limit is going to document for that. Yep. So if I save this, this will basically push the policy down, leveraging the gateway assertion. Again, that gateway 11.1 must be in place for this to work. All right. Questions on that? Hey, if not, I think that actually, yeah, that is the last feature I was going to discuss. So yeah, I guess I'll open it up. Does anyone have any questions about anything we covered? And if not, if you have any other unrelated questions of any type, feel free to bring those up now as well.
We are still here. You've just got a bit of a smaller audience this time.
All right, yeah. I know with the link changing, I think we definitely lost a few folks. Yeah, but appreciate you confirming you're still here. But yeah, if no one else has any other questions, then yeah, that's all we had planned for today. But if you think of something afterwards, feel free to reach